Good afternoon. So, I was thinking of some different ideas, and I thought another good topic to kind of dive into would be some of the trees that you could expect to experience when you purchase your land. Now, if you're going to be buying raw land, these are probably the trees that you're going to most likely encounter. You might find other ones, and I'll kind of mention a few that I would hope you would find. But if you're going to be purchasing a bulldozed lot, likelihood of running into all these trees is probably pretty low unless you've got a perimeter of trees. I've seen a couple of different lots in HP Peak be completely dozed. I mean, it's basically you've got a square plot of land and it's just pretty basic. You've got cinder and almost no trees. So if you have that kind of lot, then this isn't really a concern. Now, also too, if your altitude is higher, remember I'm in HPP, I'm closer to the coastline. These are more tropical type of trees. But if you're going to be going up in altitude, I wouldn't imagine that some of these trees are going to be there. So to get started, the first tree that I wanted to show you is the most infamous. It is the one that people around here hate. There is an effort to actually kill these things off, and that is going to be the albizia tree. This is a huge albizia. Um, the primary reason that people hate this tree is because it will grow so fast that the actual interior makeup of the wood is brittle. It's very fragile, so it's building so fast, but it's not assembling like a really sturdy structure. So high winds, you can find that the tree will fall. Even during a really strong rain or two that we've had, I've actually felt a little uncomfortable because who's to say, who knows what could really be final the final day of that tree from falling. Also, too, I've heard stories that a lot of the bug damage, like termites and whatnot, will not be noticed prior to the actual falling of the tree. So it may look fine, and then suddenly you just got a tree that rotted and falls on you. I'm actually walking out towards a small one that I've seen, uh, and this is a good example to show you the type of leaves. This is probably the easiest way, in my opinion, to actually identify the tree. So what you see here are just really neat little rows of leaves. Um, Another thing I noticed is that the young bark of the tree almost reminds me of a weed. Actually, it's mottled. But what's really creepy about this is that the tree, it seems to come up out of another tree. So it almost appears to be almost parasitic in the sense that it reminds me of grafting, honestly. That tree grafts itself into a living host and then kind of overruns it. The main reason that you want to remove these as early as possible is because they are reported to grow multiple feet in a single year, which is astounding for a tree. It also contributes to their frailty. The second tree that I think is worth mentioning is going to be what's called a YV tree. Some people will call them vives, like a V. This is a pretty standard tree. Nothing really remarkable about them. Probably the telltale sign of this particular type of tree is its bark. It's really smooth, and I've seen that as it gets older, it will literally peel off. This is actually a pretty big one. In terms of removal, this is medium difficulty with a little handsaw. The leaves are pretty round, and just a really basic tree leaf. Now, during a specific time of the year, this tree will produce a fruit, a strawberry guava. Now, I have noticed that it's a little uh, ping pong ball size fruit, and when we first got here, me and Caitlin ate one. We later found out that there's a little hole in the bottom of this fruit that bugs will get into and lay larvae. So if you are going to eat them, which I do not recommend, you're going to want to open that fruit and make sure that you're not eating worms. It's also very seedy, so don't just take a chomp out of a fruit. I promise you it'll hurt your teeth. hurt mine. They are yellow or red. Pigs really seem to like these fruits. Fruit flies become a pretty annoying problem during the fruiting season because the event is triggered across all the trees, it seems. So they're all fruiting at the same time. You just constantly run into just patches of fruit flies. But that was in about September. So it's March now, almost approaching April, and haven't had any issues. So I'm guessing that that's a late fall bloom. The third tree that I wanted to discuss is what's called the ohia. Now, this is a very important tree to the people of Hawaii. Just wouldn't talk about cutting these down if you're going to do it. If you need to do it, I would highly recommend a chainsaw. Do not try to cut this with a handsaw. And I promise you, the reason is because the bark, or the actual wood itself, is so dang dense. I mean, it's high quality wood. It takes a long time to grow. It's a really reddish color on the inside. And the reason that people of Hawaii consider these spiritual trees is because they're the first trees to actually sprout up out of the lava. And I find that the ohia actually kind of represents almost like a stony material on its bark. Here we go. So this is an ohia. Again, the bark is really a telltale sign. So here's the bark. It's very flaky, very flaky. And another telltale sign of an ohia is that it grows very vertical. The YV tree, the albizia tree, they really do curve as they build, whereas the ohia, man, it goes straight up. There actually are ohia forests closer to the city of Papaloa, the town, I should say, not city. But if you go on that coastline, you're going to see forests of ohia that are full grown, and those things are massive. It actually looks like when they get to a really mature age, their bark just falls off, and then they've got a smooth exterior bark, rather than right now where it's kind of flaky. The other sign of an ohia is its leaves. These are really tall ohia, so I'm gonna try to get a picture. Oh, golly, well, the camera's actually pretty nice. It really isn't doing it the justice. Basically, for the ohia leaves, they're really small and round. If you ever see a felled ohia, you'll notice them. But I would say that if you're trying to identify an ohia, look for a tree that's going straight up, and it has really, like, I would almost say, that specific bark type. The Vivia is smooth, the albizia is kind of white. This one's like a brown, classic looking bark. The next tree, the final tree that I'm going to show you today, the fourth one, is called an umbrella tree. So this is also what's considered another junk tree, just like the albizia. Junk tree just means that they don't do very much of anything. Some people might call them a shade tree, the umbrellas. These are easier to cut down as well, if you're going to do it, and that's because the interior of the trunk, the branches, is actually hollowed out. You can literally stick like a Sharpie into it. It's completely hollow. Now, we have an extremely large umbrella tree above our tent. I'm kind of hesitant to actually cut it down because it does provide a lot of shade, but at the same time it litters. The telltale sign of the umbrella tree is this kind of ringed bark trunk, and this is just how it goes all the way up. And that's one of the telltale signs. The other telltale sign is that leaf right there, the one that is right here. It's fanned out. Umbrella, it probably comes from that idea. When the tree actually is getting rid of old leaves, these things will just drop and that's part of the reason why they're called the junk trees, because these are pretty big leaves. They're not heavy, they're pretty brittle, but people that like their property to look clean, this is like the opposite of that. There's a tree that's very similar to the umbrella tree, has the same look and everything in terms of the trunk, but the leaves are a little bit different. It's called a trumpet tree, just a different leaf shape, more thick per leaf. Here's another fallen one. Now, these trees, they grow very kind of out, and they're really just another tree to get rid of if you don't need them. I think I'm actually going to keep that one because it doesn't have any kind of danger of falling on us, but also too, it provides a lot of shade for that little area. Whereas that albizia tree that I showed in the beginning, I would love to cut that down, but it's going to be a significant chore, and the branches just kind of splay out everywhere, so I'll have to cut it once we move our tent, which we're planning on doing soon. Some of the other trees that you might actually notice on your property, you're going to have, we've seen two mango trees on, not our property unfortunately, just on the outskirts of ours, which is such a shame. They're extremely dark bark. They're just massive. They have a huge canopy, but that could be something you might expect. And then of course the palm tree, coconuts. Those trees are, when they're there, they shed a lot of coconut, so it's pretty easy. We're actually trying to grow some ourselves by taking some coconuts that we found fallen from a palm tree on another property that wasn't occupied yet. We just happened to stumble across it while we were exploring our property lines and took a few, actually more than a few coconuts. Let's see if I can show you. Oh. I'm going to show you. Here we go. This is a young coconut tree. It doesn't look like it's doing too well. I found that growing these is a little bit more difficult. Caitlin actually discovered a grower of coconut trees, and apparently putting a lot of salt around them helps them grow, and that makes sense. They grow really close to the coast, so they're probably pretty fond of saltwater spray. But yeah, that's basically it. YV trees are really easy to cut down. Albizias are easy if you catch them young, hard if they're older, because they're just so massive. Umbrella trees, easy, also pretty annoying when they're big. And ohia, you have to cut them down, just have a power tool. They're very difficult. Even scrap wood that has fallen on its own accord is extremely heavy and dense. If you have any questions, leave a comment. Don't forget to subscribe. If you have something that you'd like to see or have a question about outside of this topic, please let me know. Have a good one.